Okay everyone, I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to render out a render sheet, which is obviously something that you're going to need for your portfolios to show your work. So I've got an asset here, just a simple pipe. I've got a low poly and a high poly version of it. Obviously they're in exactly the same place, so I can bake those details. I've exported the low and the high, and the other thing that I need to do with the low poly, so I'm just going to hide the high for a second. The other thing I need to do with the low poly is export the unwrap. So I'm going to go into edit mode, on edges, faces, and then A on the keyboard to select everything, and then I'm going to come into my UV, or go into my UV editing mode, look at my wireframe layout, and assuming everything is all well and you're happy with what you've got there, you go to UV at the top and then to UV, export UV layout, click on that. Your fill opacity you need to rock down to 0. That means that your whatever color you've assigned to your material, your asset will have, it won't have a grey background. So if this is up to like 1, it's going to be black. If it's on like 0.25, then you're going to have like sort of a greyish tone. I think it defaults at 0.25. Put it down to 0 anyway, and then in here you choose the file size that you want to export it to. So 1024 is going to work fine for this. It's a very simple asset. So I'm just going to go and save this into the folder that I've got called pipe, and I'm going to rename this to wireframe, and this will come in very useful later. Cool. So export. Alright, so I'm done with Blender. I'm going to just open up Substance. And then in Substance we're just going to do a really quick sort of import of the pipe, or the high poly, bake those together. I'm going to make sure I'm staying. So here I'm keeping the document resolution the same as the wireframe that I created. So there's my low poly pipe, and the first thing I'm going to do here is just kind of position it where I want it for the render. I'm going to go to this button at the top here, rendering in iRay. Shift and right click allows me to rotate the lighting around, also basically rotates the entire environment, as you can see. So I want the lighting kind of somewhere where I'm getting shadows in some places that I want them, and not in all of them, and getting some nice light in other places. I don't want this background, so scroll down here and just click on where it says clear colour, and that will just turn it all to whatever colour this is. So you can set that to a medium or a light grey. And then the ground, you can see I've got the shadow appearing on the ground. I don't want that, so I'm going to turn that off. And then this is my first render, so I'm going to hit save on that. You probably want to wait a little bit longer to make sure it's rendered properly, but I'm just going to hit save here, and then this is going to be my pipe underscore render underscore solid. Okay, now I'm going to come out with my my rendering tool up there. I'm just going to bake those high details onto this now. So let's go with keeping it all the same. Bring in the high poly. I'm not interested in IDs or thickness. My rear probably needs to go in a little bit because I'm cutting into the object with my normals, and then hit bake. And there's my now high poly. You could do a render of this as well, and have it kind of side by side to show that you've got a high and a low poly, but I don't think it's that necessary right now for this one. I'm going to go to my smart materials for this example and just throw on, let's go with that. So smart materials knows where edges are and where your ambient areas are because of the curvature map that you baked inside the baking section. Perhaps I don't want red, that's not a nice colour for me. Let me change it. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, and then the wireframe that we created, I'm going to use that. I'm going to throw it into my textures area here. So I'm going to come up to this little dialog box there. I'm going to go to add resources. I'm going to grab my wireframe. I'm going to open that. I'm going to tell it that it's a texture. I'm going to import it for this demo. We're just going to import it into the current session and then click import. And then I'm going to come up to the very top here and I want to add a new fill layer above everything else. So all of your textures and everything go down here. This layer isn't needed. Everything else that you've textured goes underneath. The fill layer goes on the top. And then with that fill layer, we don't want metal, roughness, normal, or height. All we want is the color map. And then here where we've got base color, that's where we're going to drag and drop our wireframe, and that will show you the wire on top of the texture. Then we can go back into our render again, wait for that to finish rendering, and then hit save render. And then this one is going to be our pipe render underscore wireframe. And then finally, if we take that fill layer off, this is our render, right, our final render. So here we want to go in the industry we call it a beauty render. So pipe render beauty. Done. The last thing that you want to do is export the textures, because you probably want to have those on your render sheet as well. So to do that, you come up to File at the top, come down to Export Textures, and then in here you want to change this, because that's where it's going to be saved to. So for me that's inside pipe, so here, and then the output template, let's say this is going out to Unreal, so I'm going to pick the Unreal Engine for Pact, and that's it. And I'm going to hit export, and you can see that it's exported my base layer, emissive that I don't really need, it's exporting the normal map, and it's exporting my ambient occlusion, my roughness, and my metallic map all as one packed map. If you want to show these separately, then in the settings you choose unpacked. Oh, I didn't thought there was an unpacked, there isn't one. You may need to use a set of different, yeah, so this one will show your metalness and your roughness one separately. So just play with these, but you don't really need, most of the industry will understand what you've done with what I just did there. Cool. So we're done inside Substance Painter, and we're done inside Blender. We're now going to go to Photoshop, and in here you just want a nice 1080 image that will be full screen on any PC monitor, and then we're going to go and open our render. So we've got a base color, our normal, our roughness, etc. We also want our beauty, solid, and wireframe renders. So I'm going to open all of those, and then it's a case of just compiling this how you'd want to in your final piece. So you select whichever one you want, click and drag, and you can drag your renders into Control T will allow us to resize. Let's say that's the final one, so that's probably going to go over here on the right. It'll probably be a little bit bigger because it's the final one. And then we can go into, here's the wireframe one, so click and drag that, go, drop that in here. That final one moved. Oh, it's because I didn't accept the changes. Okay, like that, and accept. Control T, resize. We can resize it to the same amount. Cool. Then we've got finally the base, the solid. There we go. Click and drag, drop that one in, and again Control T, scale that down. Okay, so there's our base. We can now remove. We can make the background the same colour as the rest of our scene. So got my paint bucket, hold it down, Alt, select the grey, and then fill that. And that means that we can then go into each of our individual pieces and delete the grey that's around the outside of it, which means it will show the asset without seeing its background. And let's just move these around. So this one could go here. And again, point sample. Let's do it 3x3. Tolerance to 5. It's coming out very bitty, that. Let's delete. It's working fine. Okay, so there's my 3. So I'm seeing the base model, it with a wireframe on it, and the finished article. All 3 of those guys could potentially move up a little bit to give room at the bottom for textures. So something like that. And then we have our base color. So I can drag and drop that in. Rescale that. Let's rescale it to 40%. Apply. And then we've got our normal. Again, drag, drop in there and resize again. 40% on that. Oops, changed pixels there, didn't I? Cancel that. Apologies. This is what I wanted to change. 40 and 40. Okay. And then the ambient occlusion. So this is a really kind of crazy looking map, but it's basically, if we look at this map in, it should allow me to see its channels. Why is it not? Oh, did I click history? I thought I clicked channels. Channels. Interesting. Bring up my history. Okay, so if we could see the channels on this, which should be here, you'd see that the the green channels probably using the ambient occlusion, the blue channels for like height and etc. etc. So yeah, I don't know why it's not showing me the channels. Anyway, regardless, that's why this is a weird looking coloured map. And we're just going to kind of drag and drop. Let's take that one, put it in here. And again, resize 40 and 40. Okay, so that they would be my my maps. So we can position these. Give them kind of roughly the same distance from each other, and then we can select all of them actually. And resize them so that they fit. I mean, how I'm doing this is completely. It's up to you how you do it. It doesn't have to be the same way as this. You could have a title at the top, for example, as well, to say what it is. But that's essentially everything that I want to show you. So the way that you lay this out is up to you. You bring those layers back for a second. You could probably have, if you wanted this to be bigger. I'm going to go into full screen so I can move. This could be bigger because it's the finished one, so that would probably take up more screen space. And then these two, let's accept that, and then these two could be smaller and be kind of positioned here, which means that we've got space then for the textures to be kind of there. Some people like fall upon the texture, so you've got one here and then an ambient occlusion perhaps there. Totally up to you. The way that you display any of this stuff is completely up to you. Might be that we flip this boy over. Could even do that, which means we've got space. And then obviously the last thing that you'd want to do is at the bottom, give it a name, put your name on it as well. Like that. Something along these lines. There's lots of little tweaks and tools in here for you to play with. Cool, so something like that. So this is a render sheet, and this is what you need to submit on your portfolios. This is what the industry wants to see. They want to be able to see how you render, how you've created something. They want to see what it looks like in its sort of most simplest game ready form, its low poly form. and then I want to see how it's going to look when it's like fully rendered and it's got all the nice smoothing and texture on it. Okay. Most of the industry will know what these are, so you don't need to say this is my base color, this is my normal, this is my whatever. Just leave the maps on there. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. And next.